James Baldwin was born on August 2nd, 1924, and was raised in a poverty-steeped part of Harlem known as the Hollow, with his mother, stepfather, whom he simply called his father, and 9 younger half-siblings. The family itself was very poor, and as remarked in Baldwin's autobiographical essay, Notes of a Native Son, they were treated coldly by their father, David Baldwin. To avoid interactions with his at times abusive father, the young Baldwin spent much of his time alone in libraries, poring particularly over the work of Henry James. His passion for writing was solidified by the age of 14, having published an article at 13 titled Harlem, Then and Now, in the school's magazine, The Douglas Pilot, and catching the eye of his French teacher and later mentor, County Cullen. In high school, James had become a young minister, an attempt to win, perhaps, the affections of his father. His writing style, however, would forever be influenced by the rolling-voiced, call-and-response excitement of the African-American church. In Notes from a Native Son, Baldwin recalls the only time he and his stepfather really spoke to each other. During a silent walk home from church, his father asked him abruptly, "You'd rather write than preach, wouldn't you?" To which he replied, astonished, "Yes." Baldwin's Harlem was never the romanticized depictions from the Harlem Renaissance. It was a Harlem of deep poverty, strained lives, and crumbling apartments. And some biographers claim that this Harlem was the key to Baldwin's involvement in multiracial Marxist class politics. In Baldwin's own words, "The buildings are old and in desperate need of repair. The streets are crowded and dirty. There are too many human beings per square mile. All of Harlem is a place pervaded by a sense of congestion, rather like the incessant, maddening, claustrophobic pounding in the skull that comes from trying to breathe in a very small room with all the windows shut." Baldwin's class consciousness was shaped by where he grew up, and here's another quote. "The black middle class was an abstraction to me. There were 2 Harlems. There was a great divide between the people who lived on the hill and us. I was just a ragged, funny black shoeshine boy, and I was afraid of the people on the hill, who for their part wanted nothing to do with me. To put it simply, Baldwin was born on the wrong side of the class divide and never forgot it, despite his achievements. He could not relate to Langston Hughes, for example, who came to Harlem so he could attend Columbia University. Harlem was never a bourgeois playground for the Baldwins, and to be authentically black meant to be black and poor." In high school, he joined a communist youth group. In his book, No Name in the Street, Baldwin says that, "At 13, I had been a convinced fellow traveler." Baldwin marched in May Day parades, chanting, "East Side, West Side, all around the town, we want the landlords to tear the slums down." Some of Baldwin's teachers had lost jobs as a consequence of being placed on communist blacklists, and he held a deep disdain for the liberals who had abandoned the Rosenbergs to execution by the state. Baldwin was also involved with an illustrious black communist publication called Freedom Ways. Baldwin credited Freedom Ways with addressing itself to the task of reinterpreting the American reality, which had global reverberations. Freedom Ways published 7 articles by Baldwin, and he was named contributing editor. A cover of Freedom Ways depicted a photo of Baldwin with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in tribute to a 100th birthday celebration of W.E.B. Du Bois. In 1965, Baldwin spoke at a Freedom Ways sponsored tribute to Paul Robeson. This event was widely popular in the African American community, and it was characterized as mirroring the Black Popular Front of previous decades. Baldwin was a key writer for many Americans to begin to understand the ravages of racism. He was brutally exposed to its cruelties early in life, when at age 10, he was teased and abused by 2 New York City police officers, harassment that he would continue to experience at the hands of NYPD and write about as he got older. With a steady passion and eloquence largely unrivaled in his time, he examined racism's crushing, distorting effects on people, on livelihoods, and self-esteem. Baldwin's deep, finely tuned philosophical and psychological understanding of the matter made his arguments crystal clear, as his ability to surgically dissect racism was uncanny. An example of this would be among his opening remarks during a 1965 debate against conservative segregationist William F. Buckley at Cambridge University. He says, "A white South African, or a Mississippi sharecropper, Mississippi sheriff, or a Frenchman driven out of Algeria, all have at bottom a system of reality which compels them to, for example, in the case of the French exile from Algeria, to offend French reasons for having ruled Algeria. The Mississippi or the Alabama sheriff, who really does believe when he's facing a Negro boy or girl that this woman, this man, this child must be insane to attack the system to which he owes his entire identity. The proposition to discuss what we try to here tonight does not exist with such a person." Baldwin became enmeshed in the struggle for civil rights. He traveled the South with the Congress of Racial Equality, known as CORE, and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. He made a lifelong friendship with Dr. Martin Luther King, whom he marched with from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama. In 1963, he accompanied the Congress of Radical Equality on a tour of the South, this time to not merely observe and write, but to lecture to students, white liberals, to anyone who would listen to him. During these lectures, Baldwin preached socialism, fervently hoped it would come about in the States, and it is echoed in his writing. "I don't see any other way for it to go," he said, adding, "the price of any real socialism here is the eradication of what we call the race problem." It is said that his mad goal was to awaken the white liberal, who had a good conscience, but was unaware of the cruelty happening around him due to the looming and isolating walls of segregation and the manipulation of the media. Here's a quote of his on the media. "The industry is compelled, given the way it is built, to present to the American people a self-perpetuating fantasy of American life. Their concept of entertainment is difficult to distinguish from the use of narcotics. To watch the TV screen for any length of time is to learn some really frightening things about the American sense of reality. We are cruelly trapped between what we would like to be and what we actually are. And we cannot possibly become what we would like to be until we are willing to ask ourselves just why the lives we lead on this continent are mainly so empty, so tame, and so ugly. These images are designed not to trouble, but to reassure. They also weaken our ability to deal with the world as it is, ourselves as we are." I want to wrap with some final thought about Baldwin, anti-imperialism, and dialectics. You can see from the above passages that Baldwin had an anti-imperialist analysis of the problems and contradictions inherent to the American system. Baldwin spoke to the socialist principle of internationalism and anti-imperialism, and was a supporter of the Cuban Revolution. This quote is also taken from his debate with William Buckley. "I have to speak as one of the people who've been most attacked by what we must now here call the Western or the European system of reality. Beneath then what everyone's reaction to this proposition is, has to be the question of whether or not civilizations can be considered equal, or whether one civilization has the right to overtake, subjugate, and in fact, to destroy another." This is another great quote. "All of the Western nations have been caught in a lie, the lie of their pretend humanism." Baldwin was such a sensitive writer, and so incisively expressed the way that opposing forces and ideas act in contradiction to produce change. This is close to Marx's famous quote about change, for example. "Not everything that can be faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." And this one is a good one too, about history as a never-ending process of developing, and it is a quote that historians love. "History is not the past, it is the present. We carry our history with us. We are our history. If we pretend otherwise, we literally are criminals." He understood that socialists must act with revolutionary optimism in order to make change. "I can't be a pessimist," he said, "because I am alive. To be a pessimist means you have agreed that human life is an academic matter. So I am forced to be an optimist. I am forced to believe that we can survive whatever we must survive." In closing, James Baldwin was a man of unsurpassed compassion and intellect who dedicated his life and mind to bringing the world a necessary awakening through his frank, deeply comprehensive analysis of human society and behavior. Despite opposition from all sides of the spectrum, he continued to write what he wanted and live the life he wanted to live. His willingness to explore not only the world, but his own identity in the dark corridors of society made him one of the most fearless and influential voices in the fight for human dignity. His words ring true to this day and have and will continue to instill hope in the generations to come.